Hey guys, hope your spring break is going well. I've gotten a couple of questions from you guys about the math from week 2, which is all about dividing fractions. So I'm going to go over a couple of the problems from the first day's pages. If this helps you, great. If it doesn't, you know how to contact me. You can follow along with the pages. It's pages 21 and 22 of your packet. So let's take a look at number 1 over here. Okay. So if you look at the top of the page right here, the way they show you how to do it is the way that Mr. Fraley will have you do it in the seventh and eighth grade. So we call it the Mr. Fraley method, right? Where you take a division problem like this and you rewrite it as a fraction. So that's the way I'm going to show you right now. If you want to use the shortcut that I taught you, go ahead. But I suggest you learn the Mr. Fraley method so that you'll be ready for sixth and seventh or seventh and eighth grade. Okay? All right. So to start off with, we have 6/7 divided by 4/5. So let's rewrite this problem as a fraction because fractions are our friends. So we're going to write it like this. Let me change my tip. So we have 6/7 as our numerator, as a top number, and then a big old fraction bar, and then 4/5 as our denominator. Okay. Now we want our denominator to be 1. Okay, we want it to go bye-bye, as I like to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by the inverse. Okay, so we're going to take 4/5 and we're going to multiply by the opposite, or I shouldn't say opposite, by the inverse of 4/5, which is 5/4. So notice you just flip 4/5 around and you get 5/4. And notice what happens right here. Everything just goes bye-bye. It all becomes 1. Okay, and that's what we want. Now in math, to make things equivalent, if we multiply the bottom by 5/4, we must also multiply the top by 5/4 as well. Okay? Notice here that we don't multiply by 7/6, the inverse of 6/7. We multiply by the same fraction that we multiplied by the bottom by. Okay? Okay, so up here we have 6/7 times 5/4, so we just multiply straight across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and we get, for the numerator, we get 30. And then for the denominator, we get 28. Okay? This answer right here is perfectly acceptable. You know, in my class is what we would call the C answer, right? I mean, a C is passable. If you want to do better, you can simplify this. You recognize that 30 and 28 are both even numbers. So we can slice them both in half. Half of 30 is 15. Half of 28 is 14. This is the B answer. Actually, this could be the B or the A answer. Depending on the problem, if it's a word problem, you might want to rename it as a mixed number. And when we rename it as a mixed number, we get 1 and 1/14. Okay, and if you're not sure how to do that, we just take this right here, this improper fraction, and we divide it. So it's 15 divided by 14. And remember, you remember back from a long time ago, I like to set up the little house right here for mixed numbers. We know our denominator is 14, so that's going to stay right there as 14. And then it's 15 divided by 14, one time right there. And then 1 times 14 is 14. You subtract, and then you get a remainder of 1. So this one right here is your whole number. This one right here is your numerator. So it's 1 and 1/14. Okay? You should be able to do that in your head. But if you need to, you can definitely show the long division right here. And then I did have a question from someone about how to simplify. Um, like how to, let's say you're at 30/28 and you're like, oh, I don't know what half of 30 is. Well, you could divide it the slow way. You could go like this. But I like to show you guys shortcuts and strategies. So instead of taking 30 and dividing it in half, why don't we break 30 into numbers that we know? Like, let's break 30 into 20 plus 10, right? 20 and 10 are nice numbers. We like 20 and 10 because we know that half of 20 is 10, and then half of 10 is 5, so half of 30 is 10 plus 5, which is 15. Okay, so, and for 28, you can do the same thing too. We can break 28 into, and now what I taught my students is this: if you're not sure how to break up a number into simpler pieces, just say it slowly, right? So instead of saying 28, say it 20 and then 8. So you see how we get 28, 20, 8, and you can cut each of these in half in your head. At least you should be able to. Half of 20 is 10, half of 8 is 4, and so you get 10 and 4, and that makes 14. And there's that 14 that we got right there, okay? So that's a quick strategy for cutting numbers in half if you don't want to do long division. I highly suggest you guys start practicing that, okay? All right, so as for this worksheet, if you leave your answer like this, you'll get credit, all right? If you do this, that's even better, and if you do this, that's even better, okay? All right, I guess we'll do number two as well, because number two is kind of a tricky problem, okay? Now, same thing, we're gonna set it up the same way. 7/9 on top, big old fraction bar, 14/27 on the bottom. We're gonna multiply by the inverse of 14/27, so it's 27/14. This goes bye-bye, which we want. And then up here, we're going to multiply by the same thing. Okay? Now, I'm going to multiply straight across, just like I did in the last problem. Okay? And then 27 times 7. If you can't do that in your head, just do it on the side over here. You can also use a calculator for this too. I mean, we're not testing your multiplication division here. We're just testing, can you divide fractions. So if you need to use a calculator, you can, but you shouldn't need to for this one. And then you get, looks like 189. And then same thing for this, 14 times 9. That's going to give you 126. Okay, so this is a look pretty big looking fraction right here, right? So this answer is perfectly acceptable. It's not the best answer, but it'll get you credit. Okay? If you want to simplify this, we can divide it just like we did over here, and then you would get 1, and then your numerator would be 53. By the way, there's a little shortcut right here. It works when the whole number is 1. You just take 189, you subtract 126, and you get the numerator, which is 53, okay? And the denominator is 126. Okay, so this is a better answer, but it's still pretty bad because look at this fraction right here, 53, 126. What does that mean? Like, what can anyone actually understand what that means? And it's hard to see it, but some of you might see it actually, that 53 is exactly half of 126. So this actually simplifies to 1/2. So this entire problem comes out to just be 1 and 1/2, like that. Okay? Now, if you don't see that, that's okay, but I highly suggest you start looking. If you see a big answer like this, there's probably something you can do to simplify it, okay? Now, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to do the same exact problem, but I'm going to do it in a way that I hopefully you guys start seeing. Okay, so we had 7/9, so same problem. And then I'm just going to do the multiplication part. And then we had 27/14. Okay? Now we talked about this when we were doing ratios and proportions, which by the way, that's going to be your week 3 and week 4 packets. You can actually simplify this before we go to the multiplication step. So at the top, I'm going to just use an extra multiplication, okay? Hopefully you guys are okay with that. But if you look at the top, look at the 7 and the 14. Those of you who are very strong, sorry about that guys, I think my mic just turned off on me. Alright, those of you who are really strong in multiplication facts, you should see that 7 and 14 are actually friendly numbers. We can actually divide both 7 and 14 by 7. So 7 divided by 7 gives you 1. 14 divided by 7 gives you 2. Notice a 2 goes on the bottom, not on the top, okay? You might also see this. Look at this. 9 and 27 are also friendly with each other. Which friendly, by the way, means that you can divide them by the same number, okay? So 9 can be divided by 9, gives you 1. We like 1 because 1 is easy. And then 27 divided by 9 gives us 3, okay? So now you can see, look at this problem. It's just 1 times 3 for the numerator, which is 3. And look at the denominator. It's just 1 times 2, which is 2. And so you get 3/2. This is a perfectly acceptable answer, but you can also simplify it. You divide it out and you get 1 and 1/2, which is exactly what we got up here, okay? Using the long way. So, guys, this is what I want you to start noticing, okay? If a problem looks really hard to multiply, the person who wrote the problem probably snuck in some ways for you to simplify the problem for people who are very strong with the multiplication facts and people who are very careful and meticulous about their work. You can actually check to see if you can simplify first before you multiply, and that saves you so much time and effort. Okay? All right, so um, There's one problem on page 22 I want to go over with you, and it's number 2 right here. Number 2 is the only one where it's a mixed number times a mixed number, and don't be afraid of it about it, just because it's written a different way than you're expecting. All you have to do is just rename them, okay? So we're going to take the 2 and 3/8 and we're going to rename it. So if you don't remember how to do that, remember how we do that. We take the 8, we multiply times the 2, and then we add the 3, okay? It's going to look like this in the end. It's going to be 8 times 2, and then plus 3, and then the denominator stays the same as 8, okay? So 8 times 2 is 16, and then 16 plus 3 gives us 19. So this right here is renamed as 19/8, okay? Now 1 and 1/2, let's just do this one in our head. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, so we get 3 over 2. Okay, now this is division. A lot of sixth graders forget that. Remember when we're dividing, we have to go through all the division steps, right? Don't just start multiplying, right? So we have 19/8. We're going to do the Mr. Fraley method, and then 3 halves on the bottom. We're going to multiply by the inverse of 3 halves, which is 2/3. Up here, same thing, times 2/3, okay? These go bye-bye. Up here, check if there's some simplifying you can do, okay? So I notice 19 is a prime number, not friendly with anything. 3, also prime, but 2 and 8 are both even, so I'm going to just cut them both in half. So half of 2 is 1, half of 8 is 4. Notice I can only do this cutting in half strategy if the numerator and the denominator have an even number. You can't just start cutting random even numbers in half, alright? Alright, so on the top we get 9 times 1, which is 19, and on the bottom we get 4 times 3, which is 12. Okay? And then this is a perfectly acceptable answer. If you didn't simplify, you would have gotten, what is it? Looks like 38/24. So this is also good, not that great. This is good, and then you can also rename it as a mixed number. It's 1 and then 7/12. You can use my little cheat for this. Just do 19, take away 12, and that gives you the numerator, 7, and the denominator stays the same, and then your whole number is 1. Okay? So that's all you have to do for problems where you're dividing mixed numbers. Just rename them as fractions. Fractions are our friends, alright? We want to use fractions as much as we can. Alright, well, that's dividing fractions in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions, you know how to contact me, and good luck. And have a great rest of your spring break, alright? Remember, your packets are due on Monday when we come back. Well, come back on April 13th, okay? See you guys whenever.